I've heard that the CIA was founded and it was supposed to be kind of this newspaper-ish information
Yeah.
based for the president. But then you just spoke about here this example about, uh, Italy and
Yep.
overtaking the government. So it seems like it's supposed to be this newspaper, but from the jump they're doing covert operations.
Yeah, so I think there is a big debate still in intelligence circles about what the function of an state intelligence agency should be. Is it about acquiring information that gives policymakers decision advantage, i.e. giving them information about their adversaries, whether it be economic, political, social, that enables them to make better decisions than people they're pitching their countries against? So in the Ukraine, if we could get better information than Putin, can we make a better decision on Putin, not just on the battlefield, but strategically? So that notion of acquiring information that is not in the public domain, so it's not open source, it's secret, it's hidden, using espionage or whatever means necessary to acquire that information, just to give policymakers the options of making better choices and better decisions. So lots of people in the intelligence world think that's the primary mission of intelligence services, and they were always conceived that way. But then quite quickly, policymakers decided that intelligence agencies could act as a sort of another secret hidden arm of policy, where they could use covert action, subversion, foment coups, misinformation and disinformation operations, all which could be politically advantageous in destabilizing countries that were their adversaries. So, yeah, quite quickly, the CIA acquired a ability for covert action. But already, it's formed in 1947. Already in 1948, Harry Truman, the American president at the time, saying, "I've got a problem in Italy. You need to help me. You need to destabilize that government. You need to make sure Italy doesn't go communist." So the CIA is dragged into covert operations quite early on in its history, I think. But intelligence agencies have always had, every intelligence agency to some extent, has always had covert action capability. It's just where it stands on that scale. Some are much more focused on intelligence gathering operations with a small covert action capability. Others have had, America being a good example, much larger and active covert action capabilities. But that does wax and wane over time. And the CIA, at the end of the Cold War, shifted away from covert action much more towards intelligence gathering. And then we had 9/11, and it moved much more again towards covert action, paramilitary operations, that sort of stuff. So you see the first people going to Afghanistan on the ground are not American troops, and not even American special forces. They're CIA paramilitaries are the first people, Americans, on the ground in Afghanistan after 9/11. So, and partly that's about politicians demanding intelligence agencies help them solve tricky problems that maybe formal diplomacy or even straight military action can't solve. Also, I'd say it's also some extent about intelligence agencies and the leaders being quite savvy at saying, where's the money? Where's the power? After 9/11, what do I need to do to make my agency really big and really powerful and accumulate loads of people? Well, I need to get in the covert action business because that's where it is. So to some extent, it's all about the accumulation of power as well. And how do you get a presidency here in the United States post 9/11? You need to be the covert action guys because that's who he's going to listen to. He's not going to listen to bean counters and analysts from Langley who are producing nice reports to him. It's like, find someone who can kill Osama bin Laden for me. That's the sort of thing. So I think as well, it's an institutional issue as well to some extent.
So you think intelligence agencies became a lot more aggressive after 9/11?
Definitely the Americans did, yeah. I think there was, I think it's very hard to underestimate, I guess, the profound psychological shock to the American psyche from what happened in 9/11. I mean, you'd have to go back to Pearl Harbor in December 1941 for an attack on the American, and even then it wasn't the American mainland, it was obviously American state Hawaii, but slightly remote from the United States. But the shock of America being vulnerable for the first time, this notion of hemispheric security, Atlantic on one side, Pacific on the other, weak neighbors to the north, weak neighbors to the south, we are secure, our homeland is secure. That gets shattered in 1941 by the Japanese, and it gets shattered again by Al-Qaeda in 2001. So massive psychological impact, I think, and very difficult for any president, although we can criticize Bush, not to respond to that clamor for revenge effectively. I mean, it's quite a visceral, I think, emotion in America very early on in political commentators, the media, the wider population for, we want revenge for what's happened to us. So, and the CIA just step into that vacuum, I think, and very quickly ramp up their paramilitary operations. But Afghanistan has never really ended. It's a graveyard of empires, isn't it? Yeah. It's never ended well for any intervention over history. And there are lots of mistakes made by ramping up any covert action program very quickly is always going to be fraught with problems and inefficiencies and I think the Americans quite quickly got into all sorts of trouble in prosecuting an aggressive war on terror, not only practically, but also ethically and morally. And talk about intelligence blowback. Covert action often has lots of unintended negative consequences, which come back to bite people when people discover what it actually involves. I mean, waterboarding and Abu Ghraib in Iraq and all those sort of issues around an aggressive prosecution of a war which seems to transgress international norms and international law. And intelligence agencies always seem to be at the cutting edge of that process of where's the line in terms of legality and ethics, and in terms of what's happened since 9/11.